Welcome to the Life You Love podcast.
We're your hosts, Grace Lemire
and Erin Convertini.
This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers.
For the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to.
We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love. Welcome back to another episode of the Life You Love podcast. We're always getting questions about our careers since we're both entrepreneurs, so we figured it's time for a Q&A episode answering all of your burning career questions. We both put up question boxes on our Instagram stories, so if you didn't get a chance to ask a question and you want to for the next Q&A, definitely follow us over there. But Erin, do you want to just kick us off with the first question? We have quite a few on the list.
We do have a lot on our list. Looking at our list, we split these up into self-employment, content creation, and then business logistics. And then we have a couple of miscellaneous questions as well. But this entire episode is going to be more kind of like businessy focused, I would say. Like we do have a lot of content creation questions on here, but we're kind of coming at this from like content creation with a business lens, not necessarily like if you want to be an influencer and like just, you know what I mean? Like we're kind of talking from a little bit more of a business angle here, but I'm super excited to chat about this. We're like, before we got onto this episode, Grace and I had like a 45-minute conversation about how stressed out we are about our own business stuff. Like it's tax season and there's just a bunch of like miscellaneous businessy things going on that I don't know if you can tell, but I was like crying today. It was just, there's a lot going on, but we're definitely not coming at this as if we have it all together, but I'm still super excited to chat about this. The first section of questions that we have is related to just kind of like self-employment in general and being an entrepreneur. And the first one that we have here is how to hold yourself accountable when working for yourself. And I really love this question because this is like not something that is intuitive at all. I think there's like this interesting shift between most people start entrepreneurship when they have a full-time job. So they're kind of doing it on the side. And when you're doing it on the side, it almost feels like a fun kind of little like side project or a hobby. But then you transition into doing it full time and you become a full-time entrepreneur. And then all of a sudden it's work, except you don't have a boss. So that is kind of like an interesting shift. And I know for me personally, it probably took me a good like 4 or 5 months of being fully self-employed to really get into the groove of like, okay, I sit down on my computer at the beginning of the day and I know exactly what I need to do that day. And like, it's not up in the air as to like what I need to do and all of that. And that helps me kind of like hold myself accountable because I just have like, I have my routine down of here's what I need to do. If I don't get it done, I have to work later. And like, that's kind of it. It's like very objective at this point, but it wasn't that at the beginning. It took me a really long time to fall into that routine.
I feel like with anything, like with accountability, whether it's about going to the gym or eating healthy or following through with certain habits or whatever, there's going to be parts that you like and you don't like. And for me, I try because the point of me owning a business is to have work that I love. So I try to fill my to-do lists with as much work that I enjoy. And those things I find I don't really have to hold myself accountable to completing because I like them, so I want to do them. But there are definitely tasks, like Erin said, the tax things, and some other miscellaneous business things that we both are like having a day with today. Those types of things, I definitely have to like force myself to do. But I feel like that's just part of life in general. Like you're not going to be motivated to do everything, and you're just going to have to be disciplined to follow through with it. But also, I don't know, some stuff just like needs to get done and has a deadline. Like I am contractually obligated to deliver my accountant my forms by February 15th. Like I have to, I signed an agreement. So I just have to force myself to sit down. I will say when it comes to actually getting things done and like holding yourself accountable to following through with them, I have found that giving myself focus periods or like deep work periods really helps me crank out the things I don't want to do. So I did this yesterday. I'll just put on a timer for like 30 minutes to an hour, put on some music, and I just, whatever that one task is, I just zero in and focus on it. And something about putting on a timer and putting music on makes it go by faster, I swear. And then I just get that task done and it's off my to-do list. And it's way easier just to check it off and let it keep dragging on.
Yeah, I also think it's about figuring out an optimal schedule for what works for you for the tasks that you don't want to do. I know
Yeah.
for me, I've really gotten into a groove of like, I know in the mornings I am the most creative. So I do a
Hmm.
lot of like scripting my videos, but I also know that I don't have the most energy in terms of like, I don't want to talk to the camera at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm not going to put filming a YouTube video on my to do list at 8 o'clock in the morning. I pretty much only film between the hours of like 12 and 2 because those are my most like energized points in the day. I know that I can't really focus doing like editing, like things that are a little bit more mindless, but they take longer. I can't focus on those in the middle of the day. So I tend to do them like at night. Longer projects where I do need to get into those like kind of deeper work, those tend to be a little bit like later in the afternoon as well. So it's all just about kind of like playing around with your schedule and figuring out what is optimized for you for those things that you don't want to get done.
Yeah, which I feel like goes kind of into the next question that we got, which was about organization systems as an entrepreneur. And it's funny, I get asked this quite a bit, like how I keep track of everything. I feel like, especially because, well, we both do have content creation and then freelance work, and it is totally different clients here, usually. Like, they're like a brand deal is not the same as like you doing social media management for somebody else or writing work or things like that. And it does get to be quite a bit. I think for me, what really has worked is using Notion, which I will say, I get people are like, oh, but Notion is so much every time I say it. There is a learning curve to Notion. But I tried all different ones. I tried Coda, I tried Asana, I tried Airtable, I think it was. I just feel like with everything, there's a learning curve. So it's like, pick your battle, like pick which one you want to commit to and give it a full shot. And I feel like having a source of truth for your business like that and keeping everything in one place as much as you can is really important. So I manage all of my to-do lists in Notion, and then I also have my content calendar. We keep stuff about the podcast in Notion. I have stuff for 365 Her in Notion. And then I have Google Drive, which is like, I mean, yeah, for all my files and stuff, and using Gmail to organize it. But to me, that's been the best, just having it in one place, because you don't have to be like, where's this? Where's that? It's just all in one place. And that's really all I do to like organize my stuff.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. And I think like this is a work in progress for everyone. And like my Notion, what it looks like today in terms of work and business, it'll look different next year. Like because you're constantly evolving and your needs are changing as an entrepreneur. So like your organizational systems are going to change as well. People ask me all the time what my work hub looks like in Notion, and I never show it because it's honestly, it's like organized chaos. Like it makes so much sense for me, but if I showed it, people are like, this isn't super organized. It's
Yeah.
objectively not, but like I know where everything is. And like that's all,
Hmm.
like that's the best part about working by yourself is that no one else needs to know where everything is. So yeah, I keep like my content calendar in there. I keep my running to-do list. I keep projects. I prioritize my projects in there. I set myself deadlines. So you do try to be as kind of like business forward as you can be, but at the same time, you're working by yourself. And that's the big benefit of working by yourself is that it doesn't have to be like incredibly organized.
Yeah.
Let's get into the next one. I really like this question. It says, how do you know when it's time / when you're prepared to quit your W-2 and go fully self-employed?
So I've never, I mean, I guess I had a W-2 job back in college, but when I graduated college, I went straight into freelancing. So I went straight into self-employment. So I never had a corporate job where I had to make the choice to leave. But when I thought about it, the way that I mentally kind of went about it was, if I don't go after this, like if I never try to go after it, am I going to look back 10 years down the line and regret it? And for me, for some reason, the marker in my head was if I got to age 30, you can kind of decide what age you want that to be. I said if I got to age 30 and I had never tried, would I regret it? And I knew that the answer was yes. So I figured, okay, let me go for it. I was in a situation where I had money to keep me afloat, and I also had a side hustle to keep me afloat if self employment didn't work out. But I also set a timeline for myself. And I think this is really smart because I think it's easy to go down the path where you end up, this might sound really mean, and I'm really sorry. I don't mean it in a mean way, but I think if you're doing self-employment for like years on end and it's consistently not working and not working and not working, or like you're not profitable like year after year after year, I do think there comes a time where you have to decide like, okay, something's clearly not working. I either need to change what I'm doing or get a full-time job to have income coming in. I think that's just the reality of, unless you can afford to like not be profitable for years, but that's not the case for most people. So I gave myself a year. I said, I'm going to do this for a year. And if I don't make enough to where this is like a sustainable full-time income in the first year, I'm going to get a full-time job and I'll continue to freelance on the side until that full-time job, or until that side, until freelancing ends up being the same as my like income from my day job. I didn't have to do that because I made more freelancing in my first year than I would have made with my degree in a standard 9 to 5. But I know a lot of people use the marker of like when their side hustle or self-employment endeavor surpasses or meets the income of their full-time job. But I do think it depends on what you want. Like, do you like having both? Like, do you actually enjoy having both? Or do you want to be fully self-employed financially? What does that look like for you? What are your financial goals? Which one supports it? You know, how do you have plans for how you're going to get health insurance when you're self-employed? Like, are you going to get it through a spouse? Or can you get it through your parents' plan still? Look into the costs of what those things are. Like, just think about it, I think. But eventually, if you're really debating it, I feel like at some point you have to pull the trigger. Set yourself up financially, then pull the trigger.
100%. And I also think that's the benefit of doing it when you're young and you don't have a family or dependents, and your expenses are lower, or you could always go get a cheaper apartment if you needed to, if you started making less money. But I didn't really think about it as like a super one-to-one comparison on the income front. My story is I graduated from college. I was working corporate. 6 months out of college, I started social media. The first year, that was the beginning of 2022. In 2022, my self-employment income did surpass my corporate salary. I was making like 58K or 60K in my corporate job, and I made just over that in my first year as a content creator. And I quit my full-time job 6 months later. So it wasn't like I saw that number and I was like, oh, I'm good, I can quit. But in 2023, things ramped up even faster. And it wasn't even necessarily the decision to quit was based on, it wasn't that it was based on that I was making more money in my self-employment stuff. It was the time opportunity cost. I think you get to a point as an entrepreneur where you're like, okay, I have all of these things that I want to do to make my business grow even further. And to do these things, I need time. And if I still have a full-time job, I don't have that time. So for me, like the podcast was a big one. Grace and I were talking about starting the podcast, and I was like, I cannot be doing this podcast and be filming a podcast for hours in the middle of the day if I have a full-time job. I had new products that I wanted to release. I was making updates to my budget template. Like there were a lot of things in the works that I knew that I needed the time for, and I wasn't going to be able to do that if I still had a corporate job. So I think for me, if I didn't really have ambitions to like take it further, if I wanted to just keep posting one video a day on my TikTok and working my job, like that's fine. You could do that. You could do both and like be totally successful doing both and take your health insurance from your corporate job. Like that's fine. But for me, like it was the time opportunity cost.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot too on the type of business that you own. Like with social media, that's a totally different thing versus like, let's say you're a hairstylist and you rent a booth, or an esthetician and you rent like a suite somewhere, and there's just more to it. Like if a lot of your clients are available during the day, well then yeah, it probably makes more sense to try to go all in on it. But there's probably also more overhead costs to being like an esthetician or a hairstylist or things like that. And so there's a lot more. Like you couldn't just look at your revenue at one, and as an esthetician, you have to really look at like your profit there, because I'm sure your profit margins are a lot different than when you're a content creator, just because the expenses and stuff. So there's a lot of factors to consider. But I totally agree on the time opportunity cost thing, because the more time you have to invest in it, I feel like the further you can go, which was kind of why I gave myself that 1 year timeline. Because I was like, I'm going to give myself a year to fully invest time into it. And if it doesn't work, I can go back. So I don't know. I think that's something to think about. The next question is how to use content to elevate and support my main work without it becoming a distraction. I think this is one that came from your Instagram. I don't know if they left more details because I'm kind of confused. But the question
So they didn't. And I think where this question came from was how to use content to like drive people to your business. And this is kind of what I said at the beginning of the episode, where we wanted to have the content creation discussion more along the lines of like you're starting to do content creation because you're taking a little bit more of a business approach about it. Like obviously, like Grace and I post a lot of lifestyle content too, and like we would consider ourselves, I guess, kind of like influencers to some extent, but we also like we have products related to it, and like so we're kind of in that like middle ground where we treat content as a business, but we also treat it as like we share about our life. So we're kind of approaching some of these questions from the more like businessy angle, and this question was asking like, okay, if I have a business, how do I use content creation to support and elevate and drive people to my business without distracting myself from the day-to-day operations? And I actually really like this because this is something that I'm kind of like going through in trying to treat content more like a business in 2025, and really thinking about the content creation as the how, not the what. I think a lot of people say that they like want to start posting on social media, but they don't know what to post about, or they don't know what to, yeah, kind of like what should their channel be about. But it's almost like content is the marketing arm for whatever your business is. And that's like really how it should be thought about. And just like with any business, marketing is one aspect of the overarching business duties. You have operations, you have product design, you have all of these kind of like different avenues of your business. And the content is the marketing arm. It's your marketing department. And how are you going to market people to whatever product you're selling, whatever service you're selling, the newsletter that you're writing, the affiliates that you're promoting? The content is just kind of the marketing piece of that.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think in terms of like finding the balance between spending time on the content creation side of trying to promote your business versus like the other stuff, I think like, just carving out time for it, just giving yourself like an hour a day to do it or whatever is the best way to go about it. But I also think too, a lot of business owners, because I've worked with a lot of my freelance clients are startups or small businesses. I worked more with small businesses in the beginning and then kind of pivoted to more like tech startup type of companies. But I think a lot of people, I guess it goes both ways. Some people overcomplicate content, some people undercomplicate it. And I think people think so hard about what they're doing in relation to content that promotes their business that they end up kind of driving themselves insane with it and spending way more time than they actually need to. But I think on the flip side, some people undercomplicate it and they end up putting out content that really ends up doing nothing and not driving any sort of result for their business because the content's not, to put this again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound mean today, but just like it's not great, right? It's just it's stuff
It's not
that's thrown
adding
together.
value to the people that, because at the end of the day, if you're
Right.
using content to promote your business, you're marketing for your business, the idea is to find your target consumer and put content out that they are going to see, and they're going to be like, oh wow, this makes me want to download your app, like
Mhm.
buy your product, sign up for your service. Like that, you need to
Yes.
get in front of the right people and have them drive that result if that's the result that you want.
100%. And I think when you're thinking about like the type of content that you create, it and how you go about it, it does depend on the type of company that you have and your niche. And, you know, my med spa back in Massachusetts can post like cute, fun videos of the girls on the team, you know, kind of doing these like lip syncing videos and just having fun because their audience is young women and middle-aged women. So we're going to think that that's really fun, right? Yeah. I want to see my injector, like, you know, at the front desk, like doing a silly video. Like, yeah, I think it's funny. But if you're selling a financial product or something, the way that you go about it and market it is going to be so different. I do also think this is like not really what the question's asking, but I do also think we're entering this era where founders and owners being on camera is becoming a big thing. So just getting on there and just talking to the camera too is such a good way to do it. But in terms of like actually like using content to support your work without distracting from it, I think just like carving out a little bit of time to do it. And also like if you, for example, let's say you're an esthetician, film yourself doing services and use that as like as content and like just put a voiceover onto it and explain what you're doing and try to use behind the scenes stuff because sometimes it's a little bit easier to film for people because they don't have to sit down and talk to the camera. It's just taking content from like what they already have or what they already
it's
did that
definitely
day.
about like getting into the habit of like doing content in your day to day, but then also training your brain to, you know, the term like chronically online. I was thinking about this the other day. Do you remember that term? I think that was trending like
Yes,
last year or
people still
something.
use it. It's everywhere.
Yeah, but basically it's like when you have a thought and your brain is trained to think of it in terms of like a video idea. And I definitely catch myself doing this. Like I'll just be having a random thought, like going to the gym, and I'm like, immediately my brain is like, oh, I should like make a TikTok video sharing that thought. And what you're doing doing is like you're sharing your point of view and you're sharing your thoughts and your opinions out into the world. And through that, you're going to find people who naturally think like you, which is the benefit of putting content on social media. So I kind of think of the term chronically online as like a good thing to a certain extent. But yeah, if you're a founder of a company, or if you're trying to start up your online business, like you as the founder, get on there, talk to the camera, share your thoughts and opinions, because it'll serve your business in the long run. The last one we have in the self-employment section is how to choose what kind of business to start when you have so many interests.
Okay, my advice for this is what I think we did an episode on this at some point. I think I might have mentioned it in like the episode where it was a while ago where Erin kind of interviewed me on my freelancing story. I don't know what number it is, but you can scroll back and find it. But I did what I like to call reverse engineering my career, because I have always been someone who has multiple interests. And so I used to think, for example, I love helping people. I love serving. I love volunteering. I think like it gives me so much fulfillment. And I used to think because I like that, I need to aspire to own a nonprofit or work in the nonprofit space or be a human rights lawyer. And I went as far to take the LSAT and like start to look out which law schools I wanted to apply to, only to be like, is that actually the career that I want? And what a lot of people think is, okay, I like this thing, so I should do that as a career. But I flipped it and I said, okay, whatever career I choose, it's going to become a large portion of my life. Even if I pick a 9 to 5, that's going to be, 40 hours of my life and the commute there and back, and any brain space I spend thinking about that thing outside of work. So whatever I pick, it needs to be something that I like and that I'm okay with at the end of the day, being like, this is the career I chose. So I went backwards and I said, what life do I want to live? What is important to me there? And I said, okay, I value time freedom. I want to be able to work whenever I want and not have to like work crazy hours if I don't want to. I want location freedom, so to be able to work from wherever I want. I don't want to be sitting in a cubicle all the time and having to like dress up to work. And I don't want to have like an obscene commute. I want work-life balance, and I want to be able to be in control also of my income trajectory. And when I thought about that, and then I thought about those values versus the interests I had and what they would look like in terms of careers, I realized that a lot of the interests I had and the careers that would come with them did not align with those values. So me being a human rights lawyer, for example, I thought, okay, I'm going to have no time freedom. As a lawyer, if you got a case tomorrow that you need to prep for, well, guess what? You're going to be up till 3 a.m. prepping for it if you really need to. And I thought, okay, I don't have location freedom because I got to be in a cubicle. When I'm out and about on the streets after work, and I'm a well-known lawyer in the area, I can't be really getting drunk at a bar in public. That's probably not a good look. Not that I do that anyways, but it's just, you have to be careful. It really does impact the way that you live. And so I would start there if you're trying to figure out what to do. And then if all of your interests that you have would translate into careers that support the things you value, I would start with one and maybe go go do like an informational interview with an entrepreneur who does that thing, or try to do it on a smaller scale to test it before you launch it into a full-fledged business. Because sometimes you just don't know until you do something, right? Like you might think, oh, I want to be an esthetician or a massage therapist or something and have my own business. And then you go give somebody a massage and you're like, you know what? I don't want to touch a hairy man's back. Actually, I'm good there, or like, it's just, you don't know until you do some of it. So don't dive fully in until you've kind of tested some of your ideas. But I would say definitely start with like really figuring out what does it look like to run that business day in and day out before you decide to fully launch it.
100%. And I think another thing that really helped me when I was in college, like graduating from college, and I felt like I sort of had the entrepreneurial bug, but I didn't even fully understand what that meant yet. And I think a lot of people listening to this can probably relate to this feeling, because I'm assuming if you clicked on this episode, you kind of have the entrepreneurial bug and you want to make more money and work for yourself and be self-employed and do content creation and like all of those things, but you might not really understand or like be able to articulate how that comes to fruition. The best thing that helped me was just really starting to listen to other people's stories and hearing what other people do to work for themselves. There are 1.5 million YouTube videos. There are 1.5 million podcast episodes of people sharing their stories on businesses that they run, how they own a laundromat, or a girl posting a TikTok about how she runs a stock photography business. Like there are literally 1.5 million ways to make money, and so many people are doing such like cool and unique things, and listening to their stories, even if you probably aren't interested in that exact business, that's going to spark something in your brain and get you closer and closer to what actually interests you. And then I think what you said about like the starting on a smaller scale without turning it into a full-fledged business and investing $20,000 into a business, that's what's so awesome about it being 2025 and a lot of businesses being able to be started as online businesses, because most of them don't really take money up front to start. A lot of them, you obviously have to put time into it up front, but I don't necessarily always think it's a waste of time to start something not fully knowing if it's something you could see yourself doing long term. Because even if it's something you only work on for 3 months and then you never do anything with it, you're still going to learn so much through that process. It's going to get you closer and closer to the end result. So just hear other people's stories and yeah, see what other people are doing to work for themselves and be self-employed.
I agree. I think talking to people, like I said, like doing informational interviews and kind of like you were saying, hearing people's stories is so underrated. I know when I was in college, my college had an alumni network, so I could go on virtually and like meet with different people who had graduated from my college. And that's really underrated too. Like if you can go to your college's like LinkedIn page or whatever and find people who are entrepreneurs or doing what you're doing, find someone with like a mutual connection, they will, or a mutual, what's like the word, not connection, but like, you know, someone who went to the same school as you, or someone who worked at the same company as you, or a friend of a friend, or something like that. What is that word? I don't know what it is, but when you're like connected to someone in some way, find people like that, because they're more than likely going to be down to get on a call with you and just like chat and hear their story. That was what made me get away from law as well. As I talked to a lawyer and I was like, describe your like day in the life. And he was like, I like sit at my desk and I read papers, and like I was like, okay, and what else? And he was like, that's pretty much it. Like, I'll do some online paperwork. And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, like, you know, you have like a dictionary size thing, stack of paper. I was like, what? And he said he really doesn't spend that much time in the courtroom. Like, it's not that much. You're not out there like advocating for the people as much as you think you would be. And I was like, okay, well, that was what I liked about this. So then I realized the day to day didn't work, but I wouldn't have known unless I heard his story of what he does. So, okay. We're going to make a pivot into the content creation section. And first question is advice for just starting out on social media.
I think this kind of goes back to, this is like such a broad question. And we kind of left it broad for a reason. Grace and I like didn't prep for this episode because we said we just wanted to like spit out our like raw and authentic thoughts and like see where the conversation takes us. But I think this brings us back to kind of what we were talking about, how like it's really great for founders or people who want to start businesses to kind of be like chronically online almost and share your raw and authentic thoughts. I had a content, I think Grace and I both worked with the same content coach actually, that said like, think about your content ideas in terms of the point of view, not like the video idea. So for example, the video I posted today was a morning routine. I didn't have on my content calendar like film morning routine and post morning routine. I started with the overarching idea that I wanted to talk about. So like my point of view was how I'm getting out of like a fitness slump and I need to like track my habits the entire month of February to like stay consistent with my fitness routine. That's like the idea, like that's the thought that I had in my brain. And then the morning routine was how that video came to fruition, if that makes sense. So I'm just using kind of like a morning routine as an example here, but I think my best piece of advice is to like make your thoughts into your point of view and share your point of view with the world. And through that, you're naturally going to find your people.
I remember, I think it was when I worked with the same content coach. She's so amazing. If she's listening to the episode, you know who you are and we love you. But I think she had told me like, I think it was her who said it. The voiceover of the video or what you're saying, if you're doing like a B-roll with voiceover type style video, and the visuals do not need to match. Like, and that, because when it does, so let's say, for example, you're doing like a day in the life video and you're like, so I woke up and then I went to and then I didn't. It's like, girl, we can see you made your coffee. We can see you put the ice in. We can see you put the honey in there. We don't need the play by play. And if you think about it, like if you watch a sports game or something or a TV show where they're like, okay, he put the ball on the ground and then he picked it up and he threw it back and you would be like, enough. You know what I mean? You would mute the damn TV. Yeah, you'd be like, I get it. And so Something clicked for me at that point where I was like, wow, okay, I need to, yeah, think back to like, what is my point of view? What am I trying to get across? What's the overarching message? And then I choose the visuals that go with it, just by like, yeah, posting like a day in the life of vlog. Also, this is like a random tip, but I had a girl tell me once, I had another girl do an audit of my content a couple years ago, and she had said to me, she was like, you're falling into the like and then trap. And I was like, oh no. And she was like, all your vlogs are like, and then I went, and then I did this, and then I did. That's so boring. So
Yes.
think back to like, I don't know, just like what makes sense for you. And that same content coach also told us to, which I think she told you the same thing, think about yourself in terms of relatability and aspiring. So in what ways are you relatable to the average person, and in what ways are you like aspiring or aspirational to the average person, and play on those things, because you want to have a balance of those things, and then just literally just get on camera and start posting. You're not going to get better at being a content creator until you actually like get
Yeah, your videos are going to suck at
practice.
first. You have to just get
Yeah,
over that hurdle. Like
they always do.
it objectively sucks for a while, and then
Yeah.
you're going to get better at it. But yeah, back to the kind of like the voiceover and the clips don't have to match up. This was so huge for me because especially when I started pivoting into sharing more about my life and being a little bit more of a lifestyle content creator instead of having like the personal finance niche be my crutch almost in my content. I had those thoughts of like, okay, but my life is so mundane. Like, what do I share? My life is so mundane. And it's like, I have gotten to a point where I could film my morning routine every single day, even though my morning routine looks the exact same every single day. And I could post a morning routine every single day because, like you said, the point of view is what's changing. So even though the clips look 90% identical to yesterday's clips, I'm going to have a different point of view because I have thoughts in my brain every single day. And it's kind of, you kind of get to a point where you never really run out of content ideas when you can get to a point where just take note of your point of view and be like, oh, like that's a good kind of like storyline for that morning routine, that day in the life, that like the visual doesn't actually matter that much.
Yeah, it's more about what you're saying and like the point of the video. And yes,
Yes.
cool visuals and visuals that match up is like fun details and whatever. But yeah, okay. I feel like that's like such a broad question. We could end up going into a whole thing. But the next one is best advice on how to balance a full-time job while trying to get into content creation.
Well, I feel like we have a lot of tips for this because even though like we don't have full-time jobs, we do like so many different random things, and like posting TikToks is not like our only task.
And we
for the
both
day.
had full-time, like I had my business full-time and you had your
Yes.
corporate job full-time while we both started to be content creators. So
Yes, yeah, for sure. But essentially get to a point where like your content is just kind of like documenting your life, not really going out of your way to make a dedicated video. So like what do I mean by this? I posted an Instagram reel today. On my calendar, it did not say between 9 to 12, I'm going to film, edit, and post that Instagram reel. That Instagram reel has been on my content calendar for a week. I knew it was a morning routine. I knew I had to film it yesterday. I knew last night I was going to take some minutes while I was laying down watching TV to edit that video. And today, what was on my to-do list was taking 20 minutes to record the voiceover, put the clips over the voiceover, and post it. And that was all that was on my calendar today. So you'll get to a point where you kind of like, you know what points in your week you have to film what. Like on Tuesday, I have to film a morning routine. On Friday, I have to film my like Friday night routine. On Thursday, I want to take a couple B-roll clips of me sitting at my computer because I have more of like a work focused video going on. You kind of get to a point where you're like documenting your life, and then the only thing on your to-do list is recording the voiceover. And then the talking to camera videos, like honestly, don't take that much time to film. Again, you'll get to a point where you kind of like get used to jotting down your point of view and having the overarching like video idea. And if you're just like pulling up the phone talking to the camera, it really doesn't take that much time. But then the last tip is to reuse your B-roll footage. So if you filmed a morning routine, next month when you go to make a video with a different storyline that requires a morning routine, go back and pull that same video footage. Like your morning routine looks the exact same every single day. Nobody would know if you reused it.
yeah, I feel like when it comes to the whole like balancing your full-time job and becoming a content creator at the same time. I think what a lot of people don't want to hear, I'm feeling feisty today apparently because I feel like I keep having to give disclaimers about the fact that I'm not trying to be mean here, but I feel like a lot of people don't want to hear, just like simply put, you're going to be working a lot. You will. If you're working 40 hours a week and you're commuting to and from work and then you're coming home every day and you want to spend 1 to 2 hours a day filming and editing some sort of video, you are just simply going to be working more. That's just the fact of the matter. And that's why I think it's important to consider, do I see this going the distance? Like, do I really want to be a content creator? Or whatever business you're trying to start, do I want to do this? Because you're investing time, energy, potentially money into it. So if that's what you want to be doing, then yes, commit to it. And I will say, I've mentioned this before, but when I first started my business, I was just doing freelancing. I hadn't started social media at all. And I was working 40 hours a week freelancing and 30 hours a week doing Instacart grocery delivery because I wanted to have just money coming in from Instacart just in case things did not go well with freelancing. And I did that for months. I worked 70 hours a week for like probably 3 or 4 months. Then I remember I cut down to 60 hours a week because it was starting to like impact my health. And I was like, okay, this is like getting a bit out of control. And I remember the first week that I worked 60 hours, I was like, wow, I feel like a new person. It felt amazing. And I was still working 20 hours a week more than the quote unquote average person or than like, a standard work schedule. The first week that I worked 40 hours, I felt it was like eerily quiet. I was like, what do I do with my extra time? But that initial period of investing extra time in is what put me in the position that I'm in now where I usually don't work 40 hours a week. If I'm working 40 hours a week, it's by choice. I usually work less. So I think a lot of like when it comes to balancing it, like that really just what it is. You're waking up before you go to your 9 to 5 early and working in the morning, or you're working in the evenings, or you're working on the weekends on content creation. That's just what it's going to be. And it is sometimes overwhelming. And you can do things like hire an editor or something if you're willing to put some money into it. Hire an editor and have someone edit your content for you. But keep in mind that you're also going to then have to be giving feedback on those videos and you're overseeing the editing
it's still
process.
work.
It just adds more to it,
Mhm.
truthfully, in my opinion. But some people really find that it helps. But like, and also what our content coach had told us this, but figure out what they call it, your BAM, your bare ass minimum. Figure out what your bare ass minimum is and commit to doing at least that every day. So that on days where your full-time job is really overwhelming and you're just like, I don't want to do anything tonight. Yeah, go back, grab those B-roll clips that you used a month ago because nobody remembers the damn B-roll that you used a month ago. They do not. I've done this multiple times. Or grab a video that you posted a month ago. That's what I did. I literally, when I was dealing with my health stuff last year, I grabbed a video I posted a year prior, just downloaded it, reposted the same damn thing. And guess what? It did like 100K views. Great. It's just figure out what your bare ass minimum is that you can commit to. And on the days when you don't want to show up, do that. But keep showing up. It's just going to be a lot of work, simply
Yeah,
put.
it's going to be a lot. And I also think like if you clicked on this episode, I'm assuming that you're like an ambitious person. If you listen to this podcast, I'm assuming that you're an ambitious person and you enjoy I don't want to say like enjoy the hustle. Like I hate the word hustle. I feel like that's like it doesn't give a good connotation, but I honestly do think that I'm a type of person that enjoys the hustle. And like you definitely are too, Grace. And I'm
Yeah.
sure if you're listening to this podcast, you are too. But like if you have the desire to be a content creator, I'm sure you're the type of person that once you get into it, it's going to be fun. It's going to be something that you wake up first thing in the morning and you check your TikTok because you want to see if the video that you posted last night went viral. You're sitting down watching TV and you're not super engaged in your TV show and you're sitting on CapCut editing your vlog. You're going to on a Saturday morning wake up and be like, "Ooh, I want to go like take some B-roll footage today because I have this video to film." I work on the weekends and I hate even using the word work in that regard because it's fun. It's what I want to do. When I wake up on a Saturday morning, I exercise, and then what I want to do is sit on my iPad and like get some things done. It's just fun.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I also think with the whole like balancing, this started as a hobby for me. Even though I make money from it now, it still is a hobby for me because it's fun and I enjoy it. So yeah, if you don't, then this probably isn't for you. If you do it for a month and you're like, this sucks and I hate editing, I hate posting, okay, then don't be a content
Yeah.
creator, but you probably will find that it's fun. We are running out of time here, so we could do one or two more questions. Do we want to do how to balance doing content creation and not being on your phone 24/7? I like love this question. I definitely have some thoughts here.
I feel like I guess there's a couple of things here. You have to find the balance for yourself. I have had to, this is something I've had to work on because when I was freelancing, there was a point where I was freelancing like 30 hours a week and then doing social media like 20 hours a week. And between the two, because I was doing a lot of social media management services, I felt like I was glued to my phone and it started to kind of create an unhealthy balance. So I pulled back on social media management services and leaned more into some of the other offerings for my freelance clients. But one thing I found is being on your phone more really doesn't improve your content the way that you might think. Like the extra hour of scrolling as like quote unquote research is really not moving the needle like in the way that you might think. I always kind of thought, well, if I watch what's going on, I'll be more tapped into the trends and I'll be like, more just like aware of what's going on. I'll create better content. But the reality was, I felt like it just overwhelmed me because then you're absorbing all the stuff. You get into the comparison trap. And also, trends are fleeting. Like, yes, if you see a trending audio and you want to post it and it's fun, whatever, yes, but focus more on like your personal brand, which your personal brand and who you are exists offline. It's not just online. So focusing on who am I and what do I want to share is way more powerful than scrolling, being like, what is everybody else doing? And how can I create things like that? I also have to, I find myself when I'm out and about having that desire to like film a lot of things or take pictures of a lot of things. And so I've had to just be more aware of it and just catch myself of like, okay, I'm looking at the sunset. I don't need to take a photo of it to post on Instagram. I can just sit here and look at the sunset with my own two eyes. I saw a video of someone at a concert and literally you can see it's them on the floor and you can see all the phones and everyone watching the concert basically through the recording on their phone. And something about it really hit me about how much I view life like through the lens of my phone, quite literally, and filming everything. So I've tried to just be more aware of that. But I also think having time limits on your apps is really good. I have this, so I'm only allowed to spend a max of 2 hours a day across all my social media platforms. And once I've hit that, the apps get like blocked basically. So if I want to use them, I have to hit a little button that says like ignore limit, ignore for 15 minutes, or ignore for the rest of today. And some days I do have to hit ignore the limit for today or whatever because I have something that needs to be edited or a brand video that needs to go up or whatever it is. But I try to put those like blockers in for myself, and then all my apps shut off at 8 p.m. I think it is. So same thing. They all the limits will come on if I want to use any app on my phone, and they don't come back available until 8:30 in the morning. So I have the option to ignore it. Like if I have an early flight, I need to be like, yeah, ignore the limit on this app today because I need to use like the Delta app or whatever. But it does set parameters and it definitely creates more friction in the process of being on my phone, which for me slows me down and helps me kind of reroute the
100%
habit.
agree with all of that. I feel like I have so much to say on this topic because this is like the biggest thing for me as a content creator because one, I'm an introvert. Two, I feel like being an introvert, I do need my kind of like shutdown time and just like time where I like sit and do nothing and like rot a little bit. But then also the second question we have kind of related to this is, do you have to sacrifice your personal privacy in order to succeed? And I kind of think about this in terms of the people that I'm around's privacy as well, like not even just my personal privacy, but like my boyfriend's privacy, for example. To be a content creator, I think people think that you have to be the person that is recording every single aspect of your life and every moment at dinner. And I never want to be the person where my boyfriend and I are out on a date and I'm like, hey, can you take photos of me and like take videos? And like, I need to like record us like being cute on our date. Like, I am not like that. And I don't want my life to look like that. And what has helped me in 2025, at the end of 2024, actually, I started to get very I don't know what word I'm trying to use here, but you've done social media management. I don't know if you're still doing social media management for anyone, but essentially where you're like the one posting the videos for clients. And when you do that type of work, you tend to create a content calendar for like the next couple of weeks or the next month, and you know exactly what you need to post and when. I have gotten so organized with my own content and have really started treating it like a business like that, where if I go pull up my Notion right now, almost the entire month of February is listed out for exactly what video I'm posting what day. And what that does is it tells you when you need to film, but it also tells you what you don't need to film. So last week I was filming a week of workouts and I knew that I needed to film like a couple little clips here and there of every workout that I did that week. But I filmed that. I'm going to post it today. I don't need to film myself in the gym literally one more time in the entire month of February because it's not on my content calendar. So I don't need that footage. And that like frees up so much mental energy to be like, okay, here's what I need to do and here's what I don't need to do. And I'm not going to make more work for myself and film when I don't need to film.
I think on the privacy thing too, with that question, I saw this was like on our list and I thought it was a great one. I know we didn't get to the business logistics question, so we could probably do another episode on it. But with the privacy thing, I think of it kind of like you would in a 9 to 5, where you get to decide what you share with your coworkers. If you want to be someone who's like all in the office gossip and you're talking about your boyfriend and the fight that you just got in and your, drama with your mother-in-law or what, you know what I mean? Yeah, you can share all of that, but you also don't have to, and you get to choose what your boundary is. And there are creators who put their every single thought up on the internet, and that's what they want to do. That's what they like doing. But you don't have to in order to be successful. There are plenty of creators. Erica Kohlberg, she's a personal finance creator. I remember we went to a conference and she was there. She's a sweetheart. She's like super nice. I'm pretty sure, doesn't she live in she lives in a completely different...
She was like, I'm living in Dubai.
Yeah, she was like in Dubai. And I would have never known, looking at her content, I did not know that detail about her life whatsoever. There are people that I know who are content creators that I'm friends with, like in offline and stuff. And there are things about their lives that you would never know, not bad things or like whatever, but just things about their lives you would never know because they choose not to share that. So I think it's just important to decide what your boundary is and also what you're comfortable with people knowing about, because once it is on the internet, people are going to ask questions about it. They are going to try to do their own research. I remember when I was in college, before I was even a content creator, I posted with my boyfriend at the time, and there were girls in my sorority who went and figured out what his Instagram was and like followed him. And I was like, this is just why are you sleuthing on it, right? So it's like, can you imagine being a content creator with tens of thousands of followers, what people are then going to do when you post? Yeah, you could just post a side profile of a man and there's going to be somebody who's going to go and try to figure out who he is and look him up and then whatever. So you just have to choose what your boundaries are and just stick to them and be comfortable. But I don't think you have to sacrifice any boundaries at all in order to be successful. And I think it very much depends on your niche too. If you're doing personal finance content, yeah, you can just kind of sit there and talk about finance and not share your personal life. If you're doing relationship content, you can focus on more like relationship education. You don't have to talk about your own relationships to do that. You don't have to talk about your kids if you don't want to. But if you want your content to be, there's this creator who shares like all the first dates he goes on and stuff. Well, that's his content. He's sharing a lot of his life, but that doesn't have to be yours. You get to choose what the boundaries are, but just pick them and then stick with it.
Yes, 100%. And I also think like if you, let's say your niche is relationships or friendships where you're like, I want to talk about these topics, but I don't want to sacrifice other people's privacy. There is such a difference between talking about like being in a relationship versus talking about your boyfriend. For example, if you go to my TikTok account, you know that I'm in a relationship. I talk about the fact that I have a boyfriend. I talk about being in a long distance relationship. I talk about my experiences within the confines of a relationship. You don't know what my boyfriend does for work. You don't know how old he is. You don't know, like, if we got into a fight, you wouldn't know. Like, I'm not, there's a difference between talking about my experiences in a relationship and talking about my partner. And in my opinion, that crosses my boundary that I'm not willing to cross. Other people, like their boyfriend is sitting there talking to the camera with them, and that's amazing. And that's what they like to do. And that's great, but that's never going to be me in my relationship. So yeah, it's definitely just about whatever you're comfortable with. And clearly we are so passionate about these topics and love to yap about these things. And there are so many questions on this list, especially about more of kind of like the business logistics, business finance, business tax perspective that we did not get to because we're running out of time. So if you do have more questions about content creation, about self-employment, please leave them in Spotify. We would love to do a follow-up episode on this, or you can DM us at The Life You Love Pod on Instagram. We love to hear from you guys. But thanks for tuning into the podcast, and until next week.